Hey, welcome to another episode of GenXRants. I'm your host, David, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. There's just so much to talk about tech, gaming, that I think I'll just keep that, you know, on the go so far. I might have a video later this today or next or this week about Canadian politics. My video about it, like how Canada politics works, did pretty good, but unfortunately with politics it's pretty crowded in Canada. There's lots of people talking about it, especially from a conservative point of view. So might get lost in the crowd, but it's very interesting what just happened, so I might just talk about that in a separate video. But today is about technology, and I wanted to address something that came up that's kind of hot since yesterday, and it's not surprising. It explains a lot about what's going on with the Xbox specifically. So let's get into that. Let's do some reading on the article, so to speak, on what's going on, and just go through some of that and kind of read about it. So yesterday, Tech Power Up had an article, and this isn't directly from them. I believe it was a source in Bloomberg. So let's read through that. But props to the author on this right there, and please go to Tech Power Up and support their website. But we're going to borrow this and just kind of read through it, and it's just a short little article, and it does open our eyes as to what's going on with Xbox and why the prices. And I don't know, I was in the financial industry for quite a while, so I'll give you my opinion on what's going on here. So aggressive profit margins prompt Xbox layoffs, price increases, and budget cuts. So inside Microsoft's Xbox gaming division, there's a battle for aggressive company profits, which by the looks of it must be accomplished but at any cost. According to Bloomberg, Xbox CFO Amy Hood set a company-wide target to reach 30% profit margin for the entire Xbox unit back in the fall of 2023. Oh, so that explains it. Anybody remember what had just kind of been happening and ended in 2023? Something that really bumped up gaming. Since then, the company has been undergoing significant restructuring, including price increases, layoffs, project cancellations, and budget cuts to meet this profit target. As some readers may recall, Xbox recently revamped its subscription lineup, introducing Essential, Premium, and Ultimate tiers. Please check out my shorts and my video about this. There is a workaround, at least in Canada, for a while, till it disappears. You can get your your Ultimate 3-month or 1-month gift cards. Basically, you can go to many locations, whether it be Walmart, Staples, I found, probably the dollar store, wherever those gift cards are sold. Keep your eye out for the old pricing because they're hard coded on the cards, right? So they have to get through that stock unless Microsoft wants to take probably a loss, because they're the ones that put it out, and in order to bring them back they got to compensate, right? So keep your eye out for those if you're still interested in Ultimate. Now, is Ultimate a tiny bit better? I guess so, but it doesn't include certain game first day releases still. You know what I'm talking about. So that's a workaround there, but overall, like, the price increase was 50%, which was ridiculous. As some readers may recall, Xbox recently revamped its subscription lineup. Sorry, I just read that. These plans, as I said, saw a 50% price increase, leaving many gamers unhappy with the steep rise in their subscription costs. According to estimates from S&P Global Market Intelligence, the video game industry average profits are 17 to 22%, which I agree with that. And coming from the business world, profits are like your ROI or return on investment or your profit margin or whatever you want to call it. It can differ based on what it is. So, for example, when it comes to the grocery industry, there is a smaller sliver of profit margin in that, but you kind of make up that with volume, right? Because everybody needs food. There's a variety of different foods. So that profit margin, and it can ebb and wane depending on what you are selling. Produce, though, is seasonal. Canned items have expiry dates. So all of those things are in consideration when it comes to groceries. So your profit margin, your ROI, whatever you want to call it, is going to be different based on the product. Certain things have expiry dates. Certain things will cost more or less based on fluctuations in the industry, whether that be softwood lumber, housing, whether that be the price of steel or aluminum or anything like that. All of that is in a consideration. When gas, for example, spikes through the roof, that affects shipping because the whether it be the trains or the 8-wheelers or whatever's hauling that freight is going to cost more, and therefore that is passed down to the consumer. So at the end of the day, a profit margin of 30% is not unheard of. Like, if you want a 30% return on investment, not unheard of, but it's not typical of especially the video game industry, because you have to consider that the supply and demand of it, and how much time and money it costs to make these things now, which I have an opinion. I think studios are way too big now, but that's my opinion. So if the average, let's say, is 17 to 22, by minimum, she has a desire that is 8% too high. By maximum, now we'll pull out the trusty old calculator here, which I probably should need just to show examples. So 13%, right? I should look for that. I've been doing math all my life, but I'm getting old. Just hit 50. So the max or minimum difference is 8%. The max is 13%, which is ridiculous. Hardware, almost always, you're taking a loss on, because it's a loss leader. You're making up for it by selling the software, right? And they're charging hits and percentages as well to any studio that wants to launch a game on their hardware. So let's just talk about this, which has seen a significant rise in costs due to the complex nature of modern games. For example, the upcoming Grand Theft Auto 6 is rumored to have a $2 billion budget, which is ridiculous. An astonishing amount for... probably that game is made, and I'm just spitballing here, $6 billion. So Grand Theft Auto 5, just to clarify, has made probably $6 billion to more, maybe $6 to $8 billion. The game itself, and I guarantee there will be much more emphasis on Grand Theft Auto 6 on multiplayer, but I'm praying to the good Lord in heaven that that's not the case, that they still put the love and care they always have in single player, but that's a different topic. Okay, so an astonishing amount for a game developer. I don't think that was necessary. I think it was because they are such cash cow people on Grand Theft Auto 5 multiplayer. They don't want to let go of it. Such high costs are necessary to support all aspects of a complex development cycle. A 30% profit margin, which is Xbox aims to achieve, is rare in the gaming industry, not typical at all, and is typically reserved for top-tier publishers, which they are not. As we approach Microsoft's earnings call schedule for October 29th, we expect an update. So that's coming when I film this. It's on October 24th. So we'll come back to this. I am going to review that. Maybe we'll do a live stream of the earnings calls if I'm able to. You might have to be a shareholder, which I'm not. I'm poor. I've been out of work for 19 months. To reach a 30% margin, Xbox may focus on more premium hardware, higher price software, and budget cuts of non-essential projects. Sarah Bonds, the CEO, I think she's the CEO of Xbox, had come out an interview either earlier this year or last year, I think it was earlier this year, and claimed that Game Pass was making $5 billion a year. Just Game Pass. That doesn't include sales and all the other marketing tools or whatever. Hardware will always be a loss leader. The only one that has never taken a loss on hardware, I believe, in most of their consoles was was Nintendo. And Sony and Microsoft and pretty much everybody else would take a loss, or at least a small loss, or at cost. At cost is just literally what it costs. You're not making a profit, or a very tiny one. So I think, to me, and in my opinion, and being in the financial industry for 24 years and seeing the result of a lot of this, I think Xbox CFO Amy Hood is crazy, to put it mildly. I think her expectations, I have a feeling she's had a talk with the head of Microsoft, and I always forget this guy's name. Oh, Microsoft. I don't like this guy at all. Yeah, Satya Nadella. I think he's been a bane to Microsoft. I don't think he was responsible for Windows 8, which we'll kind of talk about in a minute, but he is so driven on ROI and so driven on subscription models, and like he just took Microsoft Office and he switched it entirely into a subscription model. Then he's like AI driven, which I kind of get, but everything Microsoft is not the creator of, which is like an OS, they're just on the coattails of, they fail. And we're going to go over that. I want to say, well, does Microsoft have a good track record with developing especially hardware items and software items, kind of being innovative? And the answer is sometimes, but a lot of times no. So check out kiplering.com. I grabbed this article. I just want to go through it. It is Microsoft's 15 biggest flops, and you'll see we're kind of going to go over a pattern here with Microsoft. And where is Microsoft trading today? It's up after that news. I don't understand investments. I could do a whole, you know what? I should do a whole sit down on the things I've seen and what I understand the financial industry to be, because it is just mind boggling, the expectations of investors. But that's a different topic altogether. It does somewhat apply though. So Microsoft's biggest flops, this is subjective. I think there's probably others, but so we'll go through that. This must be old. This is 2018, so there's been more since then. All right, so this is just 2018, 7 years ago. So Microsoft ban, remember when the fit brace, fit things were a big hot commodity, people doing their walking and checking their pulse and doing their exercises, and they would wear the fit bands or whatever it was. I always saw it as a fad. The phone was going to take that over, or people would just get tired of it and having to track through it. Like, yeah, there we go, Fitbit. So wearable continued to be one of the hottest tech product categories, and experts say they'll only get bigger. So this was 7 years ago and it's died off. I don't see these things anywhere anymore. I think it's a market that just crashed and burned. Yeah, because this said shipped in 2017, the year before this article. Oh no, they must have updated. I don't know. Weird. Published 2018, but talking about 2021. So you guys got to update your offense. So I think I think part of that was also what happened with COVID hit at the worst time possible with the Fitbit and with the band, because people couldn't get out of the house. So they couldn't even to go for a walk or to walk their dog. So that's what happened. So Microsoft Band was a fitness wristband with some smartwatch features that was launched in time for the 2014 holiday season. It was compatible with Windows Phone, iOS, and eventually Android. Why would it take so long? Android was still big back then. Had a color display and a cost of $199. So these are US prices. That's probably like $250 Canadian, which is pretty high for a watch. And it was smartphone notifications, Facebook. It should have been a hit. However, users found the design awkward and uncomfortable to use, issues that a second generation version did nothing for. So they already had the fit out and they still failed to copy them properly. Ugh. Continue. Bing. Do I have to say anything about Bing? I think Google has a monopoly in the search engine. I miss some of the older ones, like Yahoo did some good searches back when it was good at it. There was Ask Jeeves. So there was possibility of competition, but I think when Google just did a good job at sourcing information, although theoretically it's not all right, but it's just a search platform. It's just searching for popular items, or I guess sourced items they choose to nowadays. But back in the day, they were actually just was the most popular. Where do you grab that information? So it was a good search tool to find back when websites were the places you had to go to, and it was hard to search for things. Bing tried to step into that. I think you had an god awful name. So that's the first problem, Microsoft. If you would have called it Microsoft Search or Web Search or something more, I think, cool or went off the tongue better, it would have been better. But Bing crashed, burned. It had $100 million launch campaign in 2017 that rewarded consumers. I think they're still trying to do that. It exists, but it's doing too good. They want to not Bing search. They want you to do the Edge browser and use that with Bing now and try to reward you with points. Bob, I vaguely remember conversations. We won't go deep in this. You got to be pretty old like me to remember Bob. But Bob was a Microsoft attempt to make Windows easier for users for PC newbies. Emphasis on was. It was a GUI, so a graphical user interface, on top of Windows 3.1, as it says in Windows 95. Why I did it with Windows 95, that was just dumb. So it would kind of it was visual, very visual. You'd have a trash can and stuff like that. The Bob interface included characters such as Rover, a cartoon dog that provided guidance and squeezed them up. That would have been great for like old people, but anyone that was even slightly tech savvy or understood computers wouldn't need it. The Bob logo itself was a smiley face and glasses that resembled Bill Gates, which is disturbing. Bob was introduced in 1995 and dead by 1996, and it was labeled a mercy killing. Don't read any further, but Bob with funny. Read up on Bob. Groove Music. Honestly, if they'd integrated it, this is the prop. This is why Groove Music fails, and an app called Movies and TV on Microsoft failed. I'll get into that after I read this. This is why these software things fail. Here, learn a lesson, Microsoft. Hire me for my secrets of common sense. You know why? You know Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music, which is not as popular, but Apple and Spotify are the two big ones. Apple not so much anymore, but definitely Spotify. If not, no one blames you. Groove Music was Microsoft's in-house, that's the emphasis, in-house music streaming service, and it predates much of its competition. It started like life as a Zune Music Pass, a monthly subscription service for Zune owners after the Zune tank. It became Xbox Music, and in 2015, it was rebranded as Groove Music, another dumb name, by the way, at $9.99 per month. A little bit high at that time. So 2015, $10. You would have been probably more successful if you'd lowered the price. Despite supporting competing platforms including iOS and Android, few people found anything groovy about Groove Music. But by then it was too late, too little, too late. And this is my point. When they released Groove Music, and when they and to be honest, movies and TV have been around for a while, which means you could rent and purchase digital copies of items. The problem, especially with movies and TVs, and you'll note they shut that down earlier this year, they no longer sell or rent movies at all. It's gone. It's like Blockbuster, it just disappeared overnight. No reason, but I think it's that 30% margin problem. But it failed because I could never play movies and TV on. You want to see what I could not play it on here? I couldn't play it on my phone. So if I bought a movie, I was strapped to two environments. Not even TV. They didn't have it on TV either. I could only play it, for three places, technically two when you think about it. My Xbox, my laptop, or my Windows PC. Only three places. It was not versatile in the sense that it could go and I could watch movies on my phone. They never, ever solved the problem of creating an app on Android or iOS. Now, maybe that was because Android and iOS wouldn't let them, but I don't see why Samsung wouldn't. They don't have a movies and TV rental thing that's successful compared to movies and TV. Same with Groove Music. They took too long and they sat on their thumbs and they were too slow to put these on devices. They were probably trying to push their music phone or their Microsoft phone back then. And that's another thing. So let's keep going because we're going to talk about that next. But this is the biggest problem in Microsoft. They don't get the app, especially Internet Explorer 6. Let's take a drink of coffee. Web browsers are a contentious product. Everyone uses them, but while some people love specific browser features, others aren't as keen, and still others outright hate them. The one web browser that managed to unite virtually everyone was Microsoft's Internet Explorer 6. I love that one. Formerly known as the most hated browser in the world, wasn't it? Internet Explorer 6 was released with Windows XP in 2001 at a time when Microsoft absolutely dominated the web browser market with a share of over 90%. But IE6 was buggy and had gaping security holes, their own creation, and they're the operating system guys. Microsoft largely ignored the problems keeping IE6 in circulation. So they created a problem, and then who came along and filled that gap? Firefox and Chrome, which is Google Chrome now, right? Would you open Google Chrome, please? Lured users away with promises of a smoother and less infectious online experience. Instead of continuing to dominate the web browser world, a situation that would tremendously have boosted Bing, right? So people moved away from Bing because of IE6, because one integrated problem affected another problem. Again, Bing is a stupid name, but Internet Explorer and the largest Microsoft Edge browser now combined for a single-digit user share at just 7.3%. You went from 93% to 7.3%. Arrogance and hubris is like a trend of Microsoft. I don't even want to talk about smart speakers. We'll skip that. Smart speakers. Kin, I don't want to talk about. Look it up. It's just a dumb idea. When they bought out Nokia and T-Mobile, and back when they were just desperate to get into the phone market. Lumia phones, that was a Nokia thing. So they just crashed and burned with that. This is only 11 years ago. Like phones, especially Android, Samsung, even LG was in the market at the time, and especially Apple. Apple was just dominant. We're way ahead. Nokia had such a high worldwide market share in the smartphone industry. Microsoft bought them and buried them, made them nothing in like 3 or 4 years. So the combination did nothing to prevent Windows Phone slide into irrelevance. And along the way, so it tried to use Nokia's brand for its Windows product. Last Lumia smartphone was mid-range Lumia 650, released in February 2016. By Q3 2017, Microsoft's quarterly smartphone revenue had dropped to $5 billion. What a colossal waste of money. Burning through cash. I don't want to talk about MS-DOS 4.0. No one that's probably younger than me is going to remember DOS at all. Surface RT, this I'll talk about. What a stupid thing to make. So Surface RT was the Gap product that they thought people that weren't rich would use instead of the Surface Pro. So there's claims that the Surface Pro is successful. I don't think so. I personally don't believe so. There was a time it kind of spiked a little bit. People had some interest in it, but then it dropped off. The problem with the Surface Pro and the Surface RT especially was that upgradability that people were used to with laptops was taken away. So you're trying to take a Surface, which was dominated by the iPad at the time. You know, iPads just crushed this. And kids loved iPads. But you're taking a product that, again, they were not first in, a hardware product. and they make this trashy thing called a Surface RT. The Surface RT wasn't as fortunate as the Surface Pro. To keep the RT a more consumer-friendly price, Microsoft used ARM Holdings-based mobile chips running Windows RT. I know a lot of people are very ARM, like, oh, I love ARM, I love ARM. I've never liked ARM. I've always kind of caught the limitations in a world where Microsoft type programming, like 86 software, 86 program software or compiled products, at least with Intel and AMD, like Intel's dying, but AMD still holding, like things like that are not going to just change for ARM. ARM is interesting for lower devices. I get it. But anyway, so Windows RT, thus apps essentially had to be written specifically for Surface RT because they're ARM products, right? They're not the 86 written compiled products. Confusing consumers and discouraging app creators. The Surface RT was slow. My point about ARM. Sales were even slower. So slow, in fact, that when the company bailed on the RT in 2013, it had written down 900 million in unsold inventory. So they basically had to like take a big loss. That led to the biggest sell-off in Microsoft shares in 2009 and wiped out 34 billion. Nowadays, they wouldn't even blink at that amount. Here's my most hated, stupidest, dumbest OS change I've ever seen in my life.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
No purpose was there behind this change. Windows 8 was released in 2012, and it was forced on so many products, and people despised it. I hated it. Hated Windows 8. It was ugly, intrusive, dumb. It was too dramatic of a change from Windows Vista and Windows, I think 7 was. Yeah, Windows 7, Windows 8. So it was Microsoft's attempt to capture all the best of the fading PC market with the popularity of tablets and smartphones. It also used a radically new interface feature called touch-friendly tiles. So they thought the world was shifting at the time to touch devices. Some of the laptops that came out were touch sensitive, which very rarely will you find nowadays, because too many times you're pointing at a screen, right? And you're like, oh, look at this. And you'll point at it and you'll be doing something and it'll edit. So it just died on the vine. It's cool for tablets, but not for things with keyboards and screens. It's terrible for laptops. Got some things wrong in Windows 8. Other critics weren't so kind, calling operating a colossal blunder, which it was. It was terrible. With Windows 10, Microsoft brought back to the start menu and definitive admission that it was messed up with Windows 8. It wasn't just messed up. You guys tried to take it away. They tried to make it what they wanted you to see what they wanted. That's what Windows 8 was. It was a giant ploy to push items, and you can see right there, like Internet Explorer and even Xbox Live, all the things they wanted you to see and nothing else. So your programs you had to swim to get, but their programs and stuff they made money off was upfront. Store, anything, Bing, all that search engines, anything they wanted to feed you was here, and you had to make efforts to go and do that. And they weren't buggy as crap too, that thing. I hated Windows. Now the Windows Phone had hope had they not made it like Windows 8. Didn't they clue in that the smartphone industry, like when you look at a smartphone, what do these little icons look like on that phone? They look like apps, like on your Windows phone. So when the iPhone and Samsung kept that they practically stole that user interface from Windows. Windows goes and makes a phone that does the opposite. And they have these little tiles. And instead of sticking what they could do best, they go to and make a phone when their competition had copied them, and they tried to be different. Had they stuck, they owned Nokia at the time. They could have just Or they could have sold it to Android, which they never did. Or sorry, to Samsung, which didn't work out. So in 2016, Windows Phone became Windows 10 Mobile, offering a unified experience. Another thing is it was incompatible with so much software in Windows. It didn't cross connect properly. Even the mail app at the time was frustrating. They didn't even have Netflix when it first started. Their store was bare. They didn't have tons of software, and they launched like half-baked. Windows RT we kind of already talked about. Xbox One. So this is the famous Xbox One, the first one. The naming scheme now on Xbox is stupid, by the way. That's another reason you fail Xbox. You guys are terrible at naming things. The Xbox One video game console is less an outright flop and more of a disappointment, given that it had some level of success eventually, but it belongs here because it should have been much more. I agree. Microsoft had sold 34 million Xbox One consoles since its launch in November 2013. However, the company shot itself in the foot before releasing its 8th generation console, sending mixed messages about its primary purpose. TV. Hey, you want a TV? TV was dying, and you went with TV? What idiots. Making things worse, the console was rumored to prevent people from playing used games, which they're great at now. Microsoft then made a bad situation worse by pricing the Xbox $100 higher, and that was because of the Kinect. So they were dominant with, some people may argue they were dominant. They could have even been more if they hadn't had the red ring of death. But the Xbox 360, despite not having a Blu-ray in it, pretty much crushed PlayStation 3, because PlayStation 3 was, one, too expensive, and two, it was too hard to program for, and it was expensive. So Microsoft, instead of learning a lesson from 360, which was, hey, if we just make great games, a great UI, user interface, they were really hot with the Xbox marketplace, and then the Game Pass started. They had everything, and then they gave the keys to a moron, and he just trashed the entire brand, and it's never recovered since. Which leads us to today. Oh, the Zune. Oh, that was the last one, right? So Zune, just look up Zune. Zune was it was a good idea, but the problem is Zune launched when iPod was transitioning over to the iPhone. So iPhone had just come out, and then it integrated the iPod. iPod was awesome. Zune was okay, but it was too little too late, and they jumped in the market late again. Anyways, coming back to Xbox, that's what we're kind of talking about today. So Xbox, you never learn lessons. 30% is way too high. I showed all of the examples, 15 examples of where Microsoft gets its hands involved and just destroys a product. I am honestly surprised, since the failure of the Xbox One launch, which we just talked about here, that it has survived this long. Phil Spencer's a great guy, but it's just not enough. You guys think 30% when the market is 17 to 34%. You don't learn any lessons. You jump in half-baked, or you don't commit properly, which is what they're doing with Xbox. You don't understand your market. Excuse me. Microsoft's notorious for not understanding. You do something well, too, like with Windows, and then you trash that too. You're like Star Trek with every other movie that's terrible. I predict that Xbox will not exist in hardware form in the next 6 years. I think they might want, as I've been hearing, they're going to launch Xbox 6 or whatever they call it. The next Xbox console will be launched. It will be a gigantic, colossal, expensive product. Probably, I'm going to guess $1,100 US, $1,400 Canadian. And that's just basically a very overpriced PC, because they said they're going to mix both worlds. And it will play now PC, Steam. What's the point of owning an Xbox then if you can play Steam? You might as well just buy a normal PC. Yeah, I don't know what to say anymore, people. Xbox is its own worst enemy. Microsoft is its own worst enemy. This is proof in the pudding. 15 giant failures, and this is what its result. They now have a CFO Amy Hood just putting up unrealistic expectations. They've burned bridges with not only the consumer, but now with the developer by raising the prices of that. Read up on that. They just raised those by like 25-30%. Why would you make money off a developer kit? It's not necessary. You make it back when you take a percentage. Raise their percentage difference by 1% on the games they make with you. They're just going to run into the hands of Nintendo and Sony now. Xbox, get your head on straight.